Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 11 of Spirit of Le Mans, the review series where I'll be assessing the upsides and downsides of each purpose-built Le Mans prototype that features on Gran Turismo 6. So in this episode, as you can see, we're featuring the Toyota TS020 GT-One, which is one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, racing car of the Gran Turismo series. Hugely popular, many people's favourite Le Mans car, and for good reason. So this car almost won the Le Mans in 1999. It ended up finishing second due to a tyre blowout, which is kind of unfortunate because it would have been the second time that a Japanese car had won the Le Mans, second to the Mazda 787B in 1991. But unfortunately, as we said, it didn't win, it came second, but it still won in its own class, which is, it's not really much of a consolation, but some consolation. So that's it for our introduction. Now let's go first of all to our city track to begin this car's review. So for those who are familiar with the GT1, you'd probably expect me to be giving it pretty good ratings all round. And you'd be right, it's one of the most popular cars of the GT series, and for good reason. You don't get to be one of the most popular cars by being bad. The GT1 is a very, very good car. And surprisingly, for a hugely powerful prototype, it actually makes a very, very good city car. It won't necessarily give you the fastest lap, obviously that depends on the driver, but it is very consistent, it has very good handling, and for a car with a reasonably long wheelbase that is mainly inclined towards top speed rather than acceleration, it's actually a very good city car. Now for low speed handling, I'm going to give it a strong 5 out of 5 because it's very good. I'm also going to give it a 5 for acceleration because it's very, very quick. Now for brakes, I'm going to give it a 5 also. So it's going pretty well so far for the GT1. The brakes are very, very good, especially considering how much power this car has. And overall for city tracks, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Maybe surprised that it's not a maximum 5, but the only reason why I'm giving it a 4 is because although it is very good to drive, it's still not as quick as some of the other prototypes. So that's it overall for our city track. Now let's go to our moderate speed test track on Ascari. Now, as we said, the GT1 performs very, very well on city tracks, surprisingly so for such a powerful car. But it's on these moderate speed tracks that this car really, really comes into its own. The handling on the GT1 for mid-range performance is pretty much unmatched by any of the other prototypes. It handles phenomenally well for these mid-range corners and on these technical type tracks such as Ascari and Laguna Seca. So unsurprisingly, for mid-range handling, again I'm going to give it a very strong 5 out of 5. Now overall, for technical tracks, again as you'd expect based on what I just said, I'm also going to give it a strong 5 out of 5, and it's this type of track that the GT1 is the best at. Now it is very good at high speed tracks, as we'll discuss in a moment, but it's on these moderate speed tracks where you can really use this car's pure drivability. And as far as drivability, again I'm going to give it a strong 5 out of 5 because it's very easy to drive the GT1, very easy to get good laps out of it, and the more you drive it, the better it becomes. It's a brilliant car. So that's it overall for our moderate speed tracks. Now let's finally go over to our final track, which is our high speed track at Spa. Now, as I just mentioned on Ascari, I was expecting this Toyota to perform at its best on high speed tracks because, as I mentioned earlier, it's primarily known for being a very good top-end, top-speed prototype. That's what it's always been good at through the Gran Turismo series. It's always been very, very good for top speed and for very high speed tracks such as Lasarte. But surprisingly, to me anyway, it actually doesn't perform as well on Spa as it does on Ascari. It does perform well, but it performs amazingly well on mid-range tracks. Now, it's definitely not bad for high-speed tracks, it's very, very good. But the lap times that it can give you on a moderate speed track and how competitive it is on moderate speed tracks is superior, in my opinion, to how good it is on these extremely high-speed tracks. Because for extremely high-speed tracks, you're going up against cars which have insane amounts of power and phenomenal straight-line performance. And although the GT-One is very fast in a straight line, its performance isn't quite as class-leading as it used to be on Gran Turismo. Cars such as the Pascalo and the Sauber C9 have kind of overshadowed it for straight-line performance. But for moderate speed tracks, that drivability that it has really allows it to gain a lead. Now overall for high speed tracks, I'm still going to give it a 4 out of 5 because it's definitely not bad at high speed tracks. It's very, very good. It's just not as great as some of them. And for top speed, I'm also going to give it a strong 5 out of 5 because it still does have a very good top speed. So that's it for our actual testing. So now let's go back to the garage for the roundup. So overall, like I said, I don't really need to tell you guys that the GT-One is a great car. Everyone who's played the GT series probably already knows that the Toyota GT-One is a great car. But what personally surprised me about testing this car, it actually made me realise more than I'd realised before, that it's actually not at its best on extremely high speed tracks. I always used to think that it was, that its main advantage was its straight line and especially top end performance. But it's actually not. It's actually its moderate speed tracks that this car performs best on. The handling is brilliant at all speeds with the GT-One, but on moderate speed tracks the handling is virtually perfect. Now any prototype obviously will wheel spin if you floor it out of a corner, but the GT-One handles amazingly well. The brakes are very, very good, the handling is very smooth, there's lots of grip, the car is relatively calm to drive compared to many of the prototypes, and I think that's due to mainly its visual design, the shape of the body being almost reminiscent of the Group C Longtails, which used to have phenomenal high-speed stability. So overall, I'd say the best point about the GT-One is definitely its handling, which is surprising considering it's generally known as being extremely fast rather than having good handling. But I would say its best point is actually its handling. As far as its worst point, well, it doesn't really have one, to be honest. But if I had to say a downside, probably just that it's not quite as completely dominant as it used to be on Gran Turismo. There used to be pretty much three untouchable cars on Gran Turismo, and they were the GT-One, the R390 and the 787B. They were the three kings of Gran Turismo. Now those three have kind of lost their crown a bit to some of the more modern stuff, but overall the GT-One is still one of the best prototypes in the game. There are very, very few prototypes that are so good at so many things as the GT-One, and to top it all off, it looks fantastic as well. Obviously that's not that important in the grand scheme of things, but if you're anything like me, if you enjoy looking at and driving the car that you're using, you'll probably be better using that car. So as usual, I'll put the ratings that this car achieved and the lap times that it achieved on the 3 tracks in the video description, so you compare that to the other prototypes if you need to. And as always, thanks for watching.